Okay. So what we have here on my Kindle is the universe book for the amazing engine for Faerie, Queen, and Country. Not Fairy, Faerie. So this bad boy came out around, I think, 93, 94. And as you can see here, this was like one of the big bad universe books that they came out with, that they advertised with heavily. It's unique, but I think it's a little too niche to start off a new system with. Especially if you're transitioning from a D&D combat-oriented system. But it is unique, and they did put a lot of time and energy into it. And so we'll go over a little bit of this here. I'm going to read a little bit of this for you. It's a right pea super in it. Oh, it's a right pea super in it, governor. No telling what kinds of bogeys are slipping around tonight. The fish vendor tips his filthy pork pie hat to the passing inspector, who hardly notices the vague shape lurking behind the shadows of the narrow alleyway behind him. Certain, and it's not a fit night out, for his voice is cut off sharply as a clawed hand closes around his throat, its iron nails digging into his skin. His screams scatter the silence of the foggy waterfront. Inspector Prescott realizes with a start that he has been standing rooted to the pavement while a black anise has just killed another victim. He's been warned that one's been about, striking silently without warning, and he certainly never thought to get this close to one. From behind him comes a hideous cackle. Turning, he sees a misshapen four-limbed creature that seems to be sprouting leaves. In its bony hands, it clutches a large knobby club. Never a peeler around when you need one, Prescott mutters, formulating a spell in his mind. For Faerie, Queen, and Country is the first fantasy universe book created for the amazing engine system. The setting, Victorian England, 187, the Tuatha are represented in Parliament. America is a British penal colony, and she could be a governess to a family in Bloomsbury, skilled in herbal lore and fairy lore, because she was raised in Ireland. Or he could be a consulting detective, half fairy himself, with training in phrenology. Or your character might be a full-blooded Tuatha bent on wrecking mischief throughout London. Step into the universe for Faerie, Queen, and Country, and don't forget the bit of cold iron for your pocket. It's supposed to keep the fairies away. So I like a lot of it's based in real fairy lore. And here's a table of contents right here. Character of England. It's very historical. Goes over how, England was, and what, parts of the UK were in the in the Victorian era. Let's see. So you can see here, you got the character of England, the role of your player character, the role of the GM. Note from the editor: skills, awards, and experience. Magic. You can have some magic in this. Skills. Let's see. All that is holy. It talks about the role of the church in this. Combat. The Peak Martin's Index of Faerie. That might be a real thing. I might have to research that. So, yeah. Tour book of Great Britain. You got the first England, bit of Scotland, Ireland. How people were speaking back, how to speak proper. I could still use that. Charity and the poor, pleasures and pastimes. So there's a lot here. I mean, this took me a while to read. I read the whole thing, and it's a lot. I mean, and a lot of it's kind of dry too, because you're talking about that. You're talking about charity back then, the poor. The pastimes and pretty simple pleasures. It's not anything too amazing, but it's unique. I mean, they're certainly passionate about this campaign setting. That's why I wanted to play it, because I wanted to see where they're coming from. And I think there's a lot of possibility here. But you got to work at it. You got to have the imagination for it. Especially, I think there's something about, there's very, having fairies and fairy kind in the big cities. That contrast is kind of, I don't know. You have to work to make that work, I think. Let's see here. They say you don't need the Amazing Engine book, but I still recommend that you get the Amazing Engine book, because it breaks down everything in combat and to make a player character more in depth. And this kind of just glazes over, how to make a character. I mean, yeah, you just need this to get going, but I think having this in addition to the game engine book helps you understand the methodology for creating characters better. This just focuses on this kind of world. Like, are you going to have fairy blood in you? Are you going to be a fairy kind? Or, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's all about the classes. Here's the player character here. The different, types of military. You got your working class, your Borgonese, the gentry, the different rankings you can come from. You could still be in the military or the different parts of it. Cavalry, Royal Marines, all that kind of stuff. Although I use that for mostly background. How much you get paid. I think this is kind of neat. There's not a lot of art in this book, which is unfortunate. I think it could have used some artists. There's some. There is some. I think in the bestiary it could have used a few pictures. But at least you got some headshots here of the different kinds of fairy cowl. Stamina and body points. Doesn't really go into combat too much, and they give you, the bestiary, but how to make the stamina points. You have to kind of refer to the original book, universe, Amazing Engine book for that. The stats, the fairy stats are very general. So, and you got skills. You can pick from these skills. It gets a little convoluted with the skills, though. And so you got your skills, your generic skills. Your class skills. Your job skills. All sorts of skills. Experience. It's a lot to chew on. But the historical stuff is really good, like in depth. And again, there's more stuff here than you'll ever have a chance to play. Here's something about the spell structure, which I haven't done magic yet, because I just haven't had a chance to make a magician. but the casting and everything is a little bit different. It's a roll under system, so most of the stuff you have to do is rolling under. Spells are called glamours here. Yeah. A lot of what the fairy stuff, the fairies can do, or it's called glamours. I'm just going to touch on some of these things. But as you can see, there's not a lot of flourish. You know, this whole phase of TSR with the Amazing Engine, they didn't have tons and tons of art because they were going, I think, more text heavy after second edition. And even when they refined second edition, you know, edition 2.5 and all that, would re-release the player's handbook, and it was more text heavy. And ranges. And there's like guns and stuff like that, and how to use them. You know, see, like, that's nice. Some of this classic Victorian style art. You know, some of the stuff that's, I think, public domain. I don't think it's, you know, they just picked it out and they put it in there, but it's good art. You know, I don't know who the artist did that did this, but from a while ago. But think of Scrooge. Scrooge is a good one. You know, that whole atmosphere. You know, that's something that you could easily do in this system. You know, but except, you know, ghosts can use maybe some kind of glamour magic to make them seem like they're ghosts and things like that. But here we go, combat with pistols. You know, and all these pistols have misfire. Like, you have to roll, you know, a certain number, and if maybe there's a jam or something, because, you know, it was less, these weapons were less reliable back then. And the lethality number in parentheses, I don't know, yeah, so you can see there. If you roll that number or under, it goes to the body, does body damage. But it's definitely a niche kind of universe, but it's got potential to be something pretty awesome. It's all what you bring to it, what you make of it. You know, a lot of the damage is 1d6, but you got some, you know, 1d3, 1d4s in there. You know, 1d10. You know, what does that? A sap, whatever a sap is. And a saber, 1d8. You know, so bring the whole gamut of D&D dice for the damage. But some of the stuff, like, so with the bestiary, some of the combat, they don't have a, they maybe have claws that a fairy can do, right? So I'm like, well, what's closest to that? Maybe a knife, but what about a razor? You know, and that does, you know, 1d3 damage. You know, but actually, one of them said 1d6 damage, but you get the point. I want my light. Hold on, let me turn my light back on. So here's the index, the Faerie index, and see, these are the stats they give you. First of all, I like that they give you a brief one-line description. An Abbey lubber, or luber, however you want to say it, a small imp who lurks in cellars, stealing drink and food while encouraging evil behavior. So 20 to 50. You know, they're just saying nothing about the fitness and the reflexes. They just give you this range. And 30's the weakest, 70's the strongest in that range. Same with this one. I think 100's the highest you can go. And you divide. So I had to do it like you do with the player character. You take this number, and you split it up equally, and you divide, in this case it would be psyche and willpower, both by, 5. So you divide 20 by 5, you get, I think, you take willpower and you take reflexes, you add them together, so you add the number, and then you divide that number by 5, and you get that many stamina points. And then for the body points, physical, whatever that number is for the fitness, you just divide it by 5. I think you round it down, and then that's how many body points the creature would get. But I like the descriptions, but there's not a lot of art here. And this is where they talk about, the range, weak, average, so on and so forth. And it goes on for quite a while. But it's neat, all the descriptions and all the different, the pronunciations. You got a joint eater here. Not talking about, the cigarette weed. But, and the different pronunciations. An invisible spirit of famine and death. So. Known skills, glamorous, non-damage, special. Little description. But it would have been cool to see some pictures of this here and there, what these creatures look like. In a way, it's neat, leaves it up to your imagination, and there's more description, but still, for a campaign about fairies, and you want a little bit more, or maybe a separate picture book or something. I mean, it does come with maps, which is, the maps are highly detailed, pretty amazing. But the illustrated, can't see, tour book, Great Britain, and the history of it, and the classes of the people, and special people that are in each country at the time. You got Jack the Ripper going on. Think Sherlock Holmes, not that he was a real person, but that's that archetype. And you really get the sense of the city atmosphere. And there's a lot of concentration on that. But I like the country aspect of it. It's simpler. That means it's easier to manage, role-playing wise. You just don't have as much going on. But you don't have as many NPCs, I think. But you could. You could have get-togethers. But I don't think you're going to have as much snobbery. Not really, as if you do in the big city. And this is like encouraging snobbery in class systems. Again, that's a very niche thing. Why would this be their first book for this system is kind of beyond me. I mean, it's pretty bold. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. That's all I gotta say. But the system has a lot of potential. And because of the how general it can be and how easy it can be with the rolling under, and the stats are general enough. Again, I think they said maybe the same about GURPS. I'm not sure. I still got to play GURPS. But see, British life. Look at all that British life going on there. Again, maybe a picture wouldn't hurt. Recent discoveries. That's kind of neat. Maybe medical discoveries there. But that's a lot. It's just so much to take in. But it's good to kind of read it in chunks here and there. Again, it depends how motivated you are. How bad you want it. How bad you want to play in the Victorian age. I mean, Call of Cthulhu, that's a lot more modern. But still, it's back far enough. For some people, we got beggars here. If you want to know more about beggars, so really, burglars. You burgle. You want to know about burgling? There you go. So there's just a lot. Speaking the Queen's English, American usage, sidewalk, English, pavement. Knickers, all right, knickerbockers, and cookies, biscuits. Yep, I kind of knew about that one. Of course, subway, underground. You know, again, as a solo role player, doesn't come into play that much, not really. And you got a whole thing on Ireland, you know. But how to speak proper. Yeah. So there's a lot here. Charity and the poor. It's, whew. Again, I don't know kind of what they were thinking coming out swinging with this book, but it shows a lot of bravado. And somebody who made, the guy that wrote this was really, or the group that wrote this, people were really into it. That's a nice map, just in general. But it's busy. There's a lot. There's a lot there. But it's cool to look at. And here's the city of London back then. Which is, look at this. Whew. Yeah. I mean, jeez. You better find a group of people that are into it. So there you go. That is it for Faerie, Queen and Country. Stay tuned for a very special adventure. Yeah, so maybe I should do a little introduction of my first adventure with Stanley, the groundskeeper. But thanks for watching. I know this was a lot, but keep on solo questing. Keep on reading, too. Keep on solo reading different campaign books and books in general. And especially if you're thinking of role-playing in a certain time frame of world history, I'd say read a book around that time. Always good to keep your reading habit up and keep your imagination going that way too.